it was combined with the smirk in that I'd seen in the classroom, where I started to think there's something going on here that isn't personal to me.
Yeah.
I need to try and understand what's being said without the words being used, and what sort of factors are feeding into this demonstration. And so I started to look into the home life and get to know siblings that were in the school, just to build up a wider picture of the child and their life.
So you're showing an interest in her, and you started to. But when you said about identity, you're not just talking about her internal identity. You're talking about how she relates to her peers as well, aren't you? So she was fulfilling a role within her class. How would you describe that role?
There's almost like strata in a school society, isn't there, where you have your intellectuals in one layer of the society, and then you have your sports people in another layer. Then you have your socially adept people in another layer. You have different layers, and I think for that child in particular, the layer they belonged to and felt comfortable in was the challenging, aggressive.
That's an interesting layer because to have your identity, almost categorized like that, each of those layers provides a functionality. Your academic students, they get their sense of worth from high marks,
Hmm.
and that leads to other problems, which we'll talk about in a perfectionism episode another day. And then you get your sports people who get their sense of worth from success on a cricket field or a rugby pitch or something like that.
Yeah.
And but being challenging, where does the success come from? And what is the reward to being challenged? What's the reward for being high conflictual?
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's so many answers, isn't there? In terms of you can attract people towards you. You get a social network around you. You get people respecting you through fear. You generally become known. And some of the research I've read around, behaviour management in secondary schools is talking about the power of the peer relationship and peer recognition, not the power of the adult-child relationship.
Yeah, so
Um,
peer recognition becomes more important.
it certainly can do. It certainly
Yeah.
can do when it feeds into feedback around a sense of identity.
Do you think this young girl was seen by her peers in that way?
Oh, absolutely. And the friendship group were very much around aggression and violence around the school.
Yeah, so she's getting some sort of feedback, positive feedback loop on her competencies in the social realm, which is fear and recognition amongst her peers. However, you tapped into the crying. She ran off in tears
Mm.
because you asked a very open and gentle question. What caused the crying? Or do we
I
know?
think, well, this is only sort of conjecture, really, because I haven't got firm facts. But what I was starting to learn about was the sadness of the domestic life,
Uh,
and the hardship outside of school that
mm,
was very could have been very hard for this young child to be dealing with and to have dealt with at the time. So there's an element of that feeding into, well, this is how I deal with challenges. I'm aggressive,
mm.
I'm violent, I shout.